The layout of a roller coaster is all of the elements in between the lift hill or launch to the brake run. Basically, what the roller coaster does is the layout of the ride. A good layout, in my opinion, is defined by unique elements and a variety of them. In addition, the elements of the layout all have to pack a punch in the experience. For example, rides like B&M Hypers or Inverts don't necessarily have great layouts since they are repetitive and have some lackluster moments, even if they are considered some of the best coasters in the world. In addition, rides like El Toro, Ijanika, and Skyrush are often considered some of the best rides in the world, but their layouts aren't as great. However, most coasters with a good layout stack up high against other roller coasters, and you'll notice that this list of the best coaster layouts is made up of some of the most well-received rides in the world. Without further ado, let's count down 15 of the best coaster layouts. Before we jump into the list, let me state that these are not in any particular order. These are just 15 of the best coaster layouts. If you can think of another layout that didn't make the list, please let me know, because I'm sure I missed a couple. These are the layouts I felt were the most unique and thrilling. Also, something to note is that I have not ridden all of these coasters. In fact, a few are still under construction or testing. With that said, let's get into the list. Helix is a mock rides launch coaster located at Liseberg in Gothenburg, Sweden, and it is one of the most scenic roller coasters out there. The station of the ride is on top of a huge hill climbing down towards the city. The ride immediately starts with a drop and a slow corkscrew that wraps in a scenic turn around the mountain. Interestingly, the launch on Helix is actually the third element, and while the launches aren't the most forceful of elements, they bring up the speed to a swift 62 miles per hour, which looks especially fast on the mountainside. The launch leads straight into a floaty 0G roll, packing the negatives before twisting back down the hilly terrain through an intense valley. A twisted floater airtime pop takes guests to the base of the hill before entering a super unique pretzel knot element similar to what you'll find on Banshee at Kings Island. A dive loop leads into an Immelman with the tracks crossing over each other. These floaty inversions are separated by a forceful valley near the pathways. Staying on the cliffside, Helix rockets through a sustained ejector moment and another whippy 0G roll, this one focusing more on laterals. Following that element is a super forceful Helix that brings the train through the tunnel and into the second launch. This launch is what brings the train to the top speed of 62 miles per hour, where it launches the train into an inverted top hat element way up at the top of the mountain, providing a beautiful but upside down view of the park and Gothenburg. The train thrusts riders out of their seats in an aggressive airtime hill before twisting its way up into the finale of the ride. The final inversion is a slow heartline roll on the apex of the hill, which takes riders into the brakes. The fantastic mix of forces on the mountainside, all with lap bar restraints, makes Helix one of the most scenic and well-rounded coasters out there. Hyperia is Thorpe Park's newest coaster, and it will be the UK's tallest and fastest when it opens this May. Manufactured by Mock Rides, just like Helix, Hyperia will be an absolutely insane coaster. Before the ride even begins, the layout incorporates an outer bank turn in the pre-lift segment, one of 3 on the coaster. The giant chain lift takes riders up 236 feet before dropping, and probably the best first drop in the world. Some of the best drops in the world twist 90 degrees in the middle. Because Hyperia is twice the height of most of those drops, it takes it up a notch, twisting riders 180 degrees during the drop. This will whip everyone on the train, incorporating violent laterals while guests are out of their seats. Next to the water at this point, the train is at speeds of 80 miles per hour, where it rockets up a unique Immelman element, where the train inverts for about half the apex, but then twists out before completely inverted. This causes a crazy ejector pop for the whole train right after a lateral whip. The train dives back down into one of the craziest elements of any ride. Normal outer bank turns are already crazy, providing laterals and airtime opposite of the turn. However, Hyperia provides the normal outer bank with a downward 0G roll. This will mix insane sustained floater airtime with an aggressive downward inversion, similar to the death roll on Iron Gwazi. And if that wasn't crazy enough, Hyperia enters a dive loop stall, where the train levels out upside down for a solid 4 seconds before finally diving back to the ground. For the grand finale of Hyperia, the train enters a splashdown into the third outer bank moment of the ride, this one being even faster than the previous one. The ride ends with one last airtime pop into the brake run. While a short ride, the layout of Hyperia is by far one of the best in the UK and probably the world. It provides the best of a ton of manufacturers and mixes many forces together into one massive ride. Fonix at Farup Summerland in Denmark is one of Vekoma's new gen models, and it definitely has the best layout so far. It took the best parts from the original Lek coaster and twisted it up a notch. Starting with a 131-foot drop into a trench, the trains at speed of 59 miles per hour enter an inverted top hat, with the ride stalling out for a few seconds near the top. This provides a great moment of hang time before aggressively twisting out into an ejector hill, providing strong airtime. The theme of this ride is sudden transitions. The turns come out of nowhere, just like after this airtime hill. The trains dive towards the ground before heading through a quick barrel roll, providing some good whip. Through a sudden double down, providing a good ejector moment, Fonix twists up and over the paths into an awesome twisted airtime hill before going through the signature element. Just like Let Coaster, Fonix does a 0G roll through the station building, creating an awesome effect of diving through the building. The train wraps around in 2 quick ejector pops, one twisted to the side and the other turning over the queue line. All of these airtime pops are a super quick burst of ejector with some cool laterals mixed in. After 2 more bursts of ejector, Fonix goes through a mini wave turn, providing sideways airtime before tightly turning into the finale. A snappy S-bend leads into one final airtime pop. Fonix is a pretty long ride with a super aggressive transitions and airtime pops, with the very unique barrel roll through the station. One of the most well-known coasters is Maverick at Cedar Point, the first coaster to really use rapid transitions as its main focus, and the result was one of the best coaster layouts out there. The lift hill uses LSMs to rocket trains up before guests plunge down a crazy 95-degree drop, tossing riders into their restraints. Maverick's most well-known portion is this section between the rocks, where the track rapidly switches directions, throwing riders laterally side to side before rising up into one of the most aggressive pops of ejectors in the States. Spicing up the layout, Maverick heads through 2 0G rolls, known as the one-of-a-kind Twisted Horseshoe Roll, before entering the tunnel underneath the station. This tunnel is super unique, and it still catches first-time riders by surprise. Maverick pauses for a brief moment before rapidly accelerating to 70 miles per hour in a super intense LSM launch. This gut punch suddenly leads into a violent left-hand turn, which rises over the lake in Frontier Town. Gliding over the water, Maverick twists between 2 rocks before entering the grand finale. This finale consists of not 1, but 2 insane stangle dives, which switch directions. The first banks to the right about 90 degrees, and the second one nearly inverts to the left. The second in particular is one of the most violent transitions on any coaster. The ride finishes off with a super fast airtime hill into the brake run. Maverick is an extremely fast-paced coaster with insane forces and surprising turns in the rockwork. Hakugei is Japan's only RMC, and it's one of the longest coasters on this list. At just over 5,000 feet long, Hakugei has an absolutely insane layout, starting with an awesome 180-foot drop at an 80-degree angle. RMC is known for their crazy airtime, and Hakugei is no different, starting the ride experience with a floater-filled double-up into the first main turnaround. The floater hills leading to the first outer bank on Hakugei, facing out of the structure, providing some cool laterals. Twisting out of the turnaround, Hakugei traverses a swift double-down element, providing some sweet ejector airtime before ascending through a 0G stall, providing multiple seconds of hang time. The trains dive through the structure before traversing a unique turnaround. Rising up through an almost overbank, the train remains banked before entering a wave turn, providing sideways airtime. Only then does the train descend back to the ground, where it enters a whippy yet floaty 0G roll. A huge ejector pop leads into the next turnaround in the structure, where a low turn leads into a floaty overbank moment. As the ride finally starts to lose speed, RMC keeps the elements low to the ground to keep the pacing up. Another airtime pop leads riders into yet another outer bank style element, this one very whippy. Finally, the train traverses a floaty 0G roll and 2 airtime moments, which leads the train into the brake run. Hakugei is a very long ride, specializing in crazy airtime moments and outer banked hills. It's a very well-rounded coaster. Next up is one of Poland's biggest coasters, Hyperion. Standing at 250 feet in the air with speeds of 88 miles per hour, Hyperion is one of the fastest paced rides in the world. The insane first drop at an angle of 85 degrees dives straight into a tunnel. Rising up, Hyperion ejects riders in a super sustained camelback before diving back down to earth through a positive filled valley. And instead of a traditional turnaround, Hyperion rises up and dives down through a whippy airtime moment, almost inverting. In fact, RCDB even counts this as a dive drop style element. From here on out, the ride remains low to the ground, incorporating Maverick-like transitions into the Hyper-style layout. A super steep turn leads into 2 ejector pops, one very small and the other sustained for a good 5 seconds. Mixing up the forces, Hyperion goes through a positive-filled overbank turn before heading into more ejector pops. Mixing up the forces again, Hyperion enters a super tight turn before traversing 2 S-bends, providing lateral whips, all while flying at incredible speeds. Ending off the ride are 3 more ejector airtime bursts, one twisted and one flying straight over a water fountain element. Hyperion is a short ride, but it keeps its speed very well, providing some extremely aggressive airtime and positives throughout its layout. Next up is arguably the best coaster in the world, Steel Vengeance, and its layout is phenomenal. I'm not going to go through every element on Steel Vengeance since it's a bit repetitive, but the length of the ride makes it feel like every element is different. There are a ton of tiny airtime hills throughout the ride, bringing the total duration up to 27 seconds out of your seat. The first half has a massive drop and one of the craziest airtime moments in the world. This top hat has an insane lateral jolt in the middle, and the following outer bank has 5 seconds of sustained lateral ejector airtime. In addition to 2 fantastic 0G rolls that provide crazy negatives, the first 2 inversions are super unique. The first is an upwards barrel roll, providing crazy laterals, and the second is a super fast 0G stall. It provides a little hang time with a lateral whip to the left midway through. In addition to all of the airtime in between, the second half has a quick overbank and a unique S-hill that dives into the structure. The finale of the ride has 2 wave turns and 6 back-to-back airtime moments. Steel Vengeance is a crazy experience from start to finish with no dull moments except for maybe the mid-course brake run, but that doesn't even slow you down. Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England is often looked at as the best hypercoaster layout, and while the restraints ruin this coaster's airtime, we're looking at the layouts here. Superman's location is incredible, with half of it being located on the shore of the Connecticut River, while the other half is on the hillside of Six Flags New England. Starting with the absolutely massive chain lift near the Connecticut River, the ride dives straight into a tunnel. At speeds of 77 miles per hour, the train rockets through a massive floater camelback. This leads into a typical Intamed overbank turn, providing very nice laterals at high speeds. A low turn leads into more airtime moments. All of these hills provide very nice floater, especially that 4th hill, which it takes at an incredible speed. Now comes the second half of the ride, which takes a more twister layout type experience, with low to the ground and intense turns. Starting with a scenic S-hill, the ride dives into a helix with pretty sustained positive Gs. Breaking up the helix is an S-hill with some decent airtime. This takes the train into another sustained helix. Again, mixing up the turns is an S-hill, this one diving into a frigid tunnel underneath the pathways. For Superman's finale, it enters not 1, not 2, but 3 back-to-back floater hills, each providing very good airtime. This leads into a turn into the brakes. The layout on Superman is phenomenal, mixing up airtime with intensity very well. Another RMC is Untamed, this one located at Walibi Holland in the Netherlands, and what a crazy ride. It isn't very tall, only standing at 119 feet, but it has some wild transitions. Starting the ride off with a double inverting stall. There's an inversion up the hill, it stalls out in the middle, and then it inverts on the way back down. A lateral filled double up leads into 2 absolutely massive camelbacks, one of which is twisted. Both of those provide some wild sustained ejector, and putting them back to back is crazy. This leads into the third inversion, a standard RMC 0G roll, this one being very whippy. Turning around, the ride goes through a snappy wave turn before 3 more airtime hills. This sequence consists of a double up followed by a double down, all of which providing quick bursts of forceful ejector airtime. It's then followed by a wacky overbank turn, which may qualify as a 5th inversion depending on how you look at it. 4 airtime hills in a row, each getting more aggressive than the previous, wind through the structure of the ride. One of these hills is even outer banked. This leads into the final inversion, a super slow barrel roll, which has a surprising pop of ejector air into the brake run. The inversions, transitions, and wild airtime make Untamed one of the best coaster layouts in the world. Starfall Racers is currently testing at Universal's new for 2025 Epic Universe in Orlando, and it's wild, not only because of the crazy layout, but because it's a dueling coaster, meaning there's a lot of interactive elements involved. The side-by-side launch sends the trains dueling up a top hat, providing great floater airtime overlooking the rest of the layout. While the launch won't be too intense because it's a mock rides coaster, it's still a great mix of forces. After the top hat, the trains enter opposite-facing dive loops, each with a pop of air on the entrance. Now the layouts start to get wacky. The tracks cross over each other, one side in a floater hill and the other in an ejector pop, and then each side crosses back over, switching the elements. So the tracks switch sides and then come back to normal. Rising up over the station, the tracks go through a variety of airtime moments before taking a low-to-the-ground turn past each other, so it looks like the trains will hit each other head-on. After an airtime hill or an S-bend, depending on which track you're on, the trains are back side by side for the second launch. This launch takes the trains up to 62 miles per hour and enters a super cool inversion. The right side does an airtime hill with a downwards barrel roll on the exit. The other track does an upwards barrel roll, wrapping around the other track and then dives down below the other inversion. I know that sounded confusing, but it's easier just to watch the POV. It's a super cool dueling element that provides an inversion and a floater airtime pop. Both tracks are now side by side and go through a high sweeping turn. This brings the train near to the ground so they can rise up through a twisted camelback, providing some lateral airtime. Both tracks takes a low to the ground turn, full of positives, and then cross over and under each other, ending up back in their original spots for the finale. A twisted floater airtime hill and a normal floater hill bring the trains back into the station. While not the most intense layout, the insane dueling elements and variety of forces make Starfall Racers one of the best new for 2025 coasters. Possibly the most complex layout on this list is Voltron at Europa Park, a mock ride's Big Dipper opening this year. It's themed to Nikola Tesla, and the theming is going to be out of this world. starting off as one of the most unique launches as it starts off horizontal but then goes straight vertical 90 degrees, which leaves riders accelerating into the first inversion, an inverted top hat full of hang time. Then, leveling out on top of the theming, Voltron rolls through a whippy barrel roll. A super quick ejector pop leads into two back-to-back inversions, both of which are Immelmans. These have some nice positives on the entrance and some good hang time throughout, which leads into the second launch, a quick booster launch to get the train really going. This booster launch takes the train up into a 0G stall, which extends riders upside down for many seconds before finally leveling out. A floater hill to mix up the forces takes riders up and over the track, before diving down into the mid-ride show section. This is super interesting as there will be a slow turntable during this show scene, which takes the train into a swing launch. As if the ride wasn't already epic, a swing launch mixes up the forces even more. The train goes up a backward spike, providing some good negatives before launching forward into the main top hat. The main top hat wraps over the show building into two massive camelback hills. The first provides some great airtime, but the second is banked 90 degrees to the left, hopefully providing some phenomenal sideways airtime. We're nearing the end of this long ride now, taking a double up into the mid-course brake run. Through a slow corkscrew with hang time, the train is now low to the ground through a whippy S-bend. This takes the train through another slow corkscrew, which pops riders into the brake run. Through 7 inversions, many airtime moments, and 4 launches over 4,500 feet of track, Voltron will definitely be Europa Park's best coaster layout. Wildcat's Revenge is RMC's newest coaster, opening at Hershey Park in 2023, and it's a masterpiece. Its main focus is intensity and pacing, which it does very well. After climbing 140 feet into the air, Wildcat's Revenge drops into a tight valley at speeds of 62 miles per hour. It first rises into the first of 4 inversions, a unique step-up underflip, providing great hang time around the turn. This then rises up into an insane camelback, providing up to 4 seconds of sustained ejector airtime. An exciting twisted double up then leads into the first of 2 wave turns, this one being very high off the ground with sideways airtime. Then comes the best inversion on the ride, a huge 0G stall element, providing many seconds of great hang time. Following is the other mentioned wave turn, this one being even quicker than the last, and with a tighter pullout. Mind you, at this point of the ride, the train is still hauling through all of the elements, so all of the moments are very intense. Following is the best part of the ride, a double down with a weird lateral kink in the middle, so it's a very weird but intense ejector pop. Next comes a super whippy 0G roll with great negatives, and to mix up these forces is a low to the ground positive filled overbank. Then following is another 0G roll. This sequence of airtime to positives to airtime is absolutely insane, and it only takes about 6 seconds to traverse, so the pacing is absolutely wild. The finale of the ride takes a dive through the structure into a twisted airtime pop, which leads into the final brake run. However, the entrance to the brake run is unbanked through a left-hand turn, so it's a super sudden wild lateral jolt. These last 3 coasters are made by the best coaster manufacturer, Untamed, and this is probably the most well-known of the bunch. Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure in Florida is one of the most iconic roller coasters. The first launch and first half of the ride takes place inside a raptor pen from Jurassic World, and all of the elements are super compact and whippy. The first launch takes the train through an Immelman inside of the raptor pen. This Immelman provides good hang time before diving through the rockwork of the pen. A dive loop then whips the train into a high-speed turn. This turn leads into an airtime pop over the previously mentioned rockwork. Passing through a tunnel, the train goes through a few slower S-bends, creating some fun transitions before diving low to the ground. Rising up through some more S-bends, Velocicoaster enters its second launch, escaping the raptor pen. Bringing the train up to 70 miles per hour, this second launch rockets the train up a 155-foot tall top hat overlooking the lagoon. With some wild airtime down the top hat, the train flies into a 0G stall, providing a few seconds of hang time over the pathways. Whipping out, the train goes through a sideways airtime moment over the lagoon before entering an off-axis airtime hill. The mix of forces in this super intense spaghetti bowl is crazy. An overbank turn takes the train into the finale. A small ejector pop leads into the legendary Mosasaurus roll over the lagoon, which is often regarded as the world's best inversion, providing both laterals with airtime while the world spins around. Ending off the ride is a lateral whip into the brake run, back in the raptor pen. The mix of forces, crazy launches, and theming makes the layout of Velocicoaster one of the best. Moving on to another Untamed launch coaster, Toutatis gives Velocicoaster a run for its money. While the theming isn't as prevalent on Toutatis, the layout more than makes up for it. An epic first launch through a trench takes riders into a whippy 0G stall, and while not very quick, it sure provides the hang time. 2 weird outer bank curves take the train into the main swing launch. Everyone knows how swing launches work. The first launch takes the train halfway up the top hat, before launching backwards up the spike. On the third launch, the train makes it over the top hat. However, Toutatis has a hidden airtime hill in the middle, providing some crazy ejector airtime, including backwards airtime. Once over that top hat, the trims slow the train down, providing a hanging sensation before dropping down the 167-foot tall drop. From now on, Toutatis' pacing is out of this world, and S-Bend takes riders into another zero-G stall. This one faster than the first, but still providing many seconds of hang time. Whipping out, the trains travel over a sideways banked airtime hill, and then a normal camelback. This camelback is super powerful and sustained. 2 whippy S-bends take the train through what Untamed is calling a wall stall. To end off the coaster, a positive filled valley takes guests through a violently whippy barrel roll over some theming. The final turn leads into an aggressive double up into the brake run. The airtime is super strong on Toutatis, and the inversions are all unique. In addition, Toutatis incorporates a fun backwards segment. And finally, we have Untamed's newest mega coaster, Kondaa at Walibi, Belgium. Some call this the best coaster in Europe, and I can see why. The ride is crazy from start to finish. The 164-foot tall drop has a crazy lateral whip halfway down, providing some awesome lateral airtime. At a speed of 70 miles per hour, the train rockets over a camelback, providing up to 4 seconds of sustained ejector airtime. If that wasn't enough, the next element provides more airtime, but this time through an outer bank turn. This mixes sustained ejector airtime with some crazy laterals. Up next is the most unique element on the ride, what Untamed is calling a non-inverting cobra roll. Take a cobra roll, but have the track twist opposite on the apex. This causes a positive filled valley entering and exiting, but a whippy lateral sensation on both apexes. On the downwards leg, the back row gets aggressively whipped down. A quick ejector hill takes trains through a positive filled valley. This valley leads guests into another wall stall, just like on Toutatis, providing some decent sideways airtime. Another positive filled valley takes Kondaa into what it's known for. The entire ending leg of Kondaa is airtime hill after airtime hill, each more extreme than the previous. Starting off, this segment is a violent airtime hill into a twisted double down. Both hills on the double down are twisted in opposite directions, causing some awesome laterals. Another airtime hill in low turn, leading to the last stretch of hills, parallel to the lift hill. 3 airtime pops, the last one off axis, lead Kondaa into the brake run. While there aren't any inversions, the insane airtime and variety of elements on Kondaa make it one of the best. And that concludes this massive video of the 15 best coaster layouts. Comment down below what you think is the best coaster layout, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Please let me know if I missed any layouts. There's definitely a lot more, but I can only include 15 in this video. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.